You're listening to Big World Network.
Average, Season 2, Episode 8. Written by Jonathan Thompson, read by Heather Thompson. If someone were to put a gun to my head and force me to claim that something, anything I can do was a superpower, I think I know what I would say. I would tell them that my brain is a highly advanced predictive computer. And I could say this with certainty. I've felt its power. Unfortunately, it's the worst possible thing my brain could be the best at. See, I can only predict negative outcomes to situations and actions. To make it worse, this foresight extends to infinite generations. Please, allow me to explain, I would say to the gunman. When I miss the bus for school, I don't just think, oh great, now I'm going to be late. I think, now Dad has to drive me, which means he's going to be late and he'll have to call his boss to tell them that his son can't even get himself on the bus on time. Then I have to endure entering the school late under the scornful eyes of the woman in the front office, who will remind me while writing up my pass that if I'm late 3 more times, it counts as an absence. She'll ask why I was late, even though she doesn't write the reason down on any official paperwork. She's just nosy and cruel. And this all happens before I have to trudge into my class and repeat the whole public flogging again with my teacher. This goes on and on. Ultimately, my whole day will be completely ruined. And that's just one example. So, when my dad told me that he had signed me up for Vinny's class, my mind went wild. I have to admit, though, I didn't see myself honestly ending up in the aforementioned gun-to-my-head scenario when I entertained all the negative ways being in Vinny's class could go. It actually happening was a real shocker. Granted, it wasn't a real gun in the strictest sense of the word, but it sure felt real. It even had a working trigger and hammer and made bang noises. That's a real enough gun as far as my temples are concerned. But I'm going to spare myself the embarrassment of giving you a detailed account of what happened during the course of the class. I will, however, tell you that I left the first day with more than a few scrapes and bruises. That I got before the class even started, while walking through the door. After the class, Vinny and I went back to his office. More correctly, I limped back to Vinny's office. It was small, with one window immediately opposite the door. A cheap little desk was pushed up close to the window, cluttered high with paperwork. Honestly, the office wasn't really what I had expected. Vinny always carried himself with such power and dignity. I had envisioned a massive carved mahogany desk and maybe a fish tank. I guess that just proves that I really knew nothing about what it's like to be a small-town cop. Dozens of pictures hung on the walls, and I was instantly drawn to one of my dad and Vinny. Dad looked virtually the same, except he didn't have his usual persistent grin. He actually looked pretty annoyed. And there was a third man that I didn't recognize with his arm around my father. "Hey, who's this?" I asked, pointing to the stranger. "Oh," Vinny said, a little startled. "Just someone your dad and I grew up with. Lost touch with him a long time ago." Vinny sat down, clearly wanting this whole interview thing to be over with, while I continued looking at the picture. "Quinn," he said. "I've got a lot of work to do yet." "Right, yeah, sorry." I pulled out my pad and fumbled through the pages until I came to the section set aside for Vinny. "First off, Cosmos seems to think that the whole family has superpowers, but Gail doesn't. What do you think?" "I guess I'm somewhere in the middle," he said. "I can't deny that we can do things that no one else can, but I think that the word superpowers sort of elevates us to a position we don't really deserve." "Interesting," I said as I scribbled down my notes. "And when did you first discover what you could do?" "I was probably about 12, I think." "Was there a specific event or something that contributed to your finding it?" You know how my dad is. My parents were always whispering, keeping secrets. So one day, I could just hear everything. "Wasn't that a little overwhelming?" I asked. "Yeah, at first. I wasn't really sure what was happening, but eventually I learned to control it." "So you can shut it off and turn it on whenever you want?" "No, but if I focus on one thing, something constant, I can sort of tune everything else out." Just like everybody else, I guess. If you just focus your hearing on one thing, all the other junk gets tuned down, right? But you can still hear it. Okay, and what do you focus on if outside noises are too much for you? My heartbeat. So, did you know about Gail's power, or ability, or whatever, when you guys got married? No, actually. You know how she is. She doesn't like to draw attention to herself. I mean, I had noticed little things here and there, but I didn't really understand the full extent of what she could do. For the most part, I was satisfied. I had learned more about Vinny's power, which was pretty simple. I had also strengthened my theory by gathering information about his past. Somehow, though, I was a little disappointed in this whole interview process. Sure, I had only done 3, 4 if you count my dad, but they just weren't all that exciting. Maybe it was because it was the LaGuardias, who I already knew and who were already comfortable with me. I stood up to leave. All right, well, thanks. I think that's everything. Wait, Quinn, can I ask you a question? Sure, I said. Does your dad, my heart started racing, have, my vision blurred, powers? My whole body went numb. I truthfully, sincerely, and genuinely had no idea what to say. Vinny was my dad's closest friend, so he had to have his suspicions. I mean, anyone who spent any amount of time with George Pierce knew the man was unusual. Couldn't lie to Vinny, but I still felt a duty to protect my father. Then I remembered that Cosmo already knew, and the LaGuardias had exposed this part of their lives to me. I would deal with Ultrarian later. Yeah, he does, I told him. He smiled and nodded. Yeah, I thought so. Now the real trouble was deciding how much to admit. What had Vinny seen that made him think so? What power did he think my dad had? What gave it away? I asked, hoping that Vinny would give me something to work off of. I don't know exactly. George was just always better than everyone at everything. He was the fastest kid in school, ridiculously strong, just obviously not an average kid. Well, that was useless. Do you? He asked. No powers. Weird. Are you sure? He asked. Yeah, I'm sure, but my dad's convinced that we just have to find it. Vinny chuckled. He's probably right. I just shrugged. No, I mean it, Quinn. It's really just a matter of admitting that there's something about you that makes you incredible. A lot more people have something and just don't realize it because they doubt themselves. They go through their whole lives and never realize their full potential. What if I already missed my window, though? I mean, what if there's only a certain period of time where you can develop this stuff before you just lose it? He laughed again. I wouldn't worry about that. George has a way of bringing out the best in people. Whatever it is that makes you special, trust me, your dad'll find it. Yeah, we'll see, I said, leaning towards the exit again. See, Quinn. I left the interview really unsure of how or even if I should proceed. I felt like I already fully understood how powers worked and where they came from, so I was done, right? And what was the point of doing all these interviews? What was I going to do with them anyway? If I was going to be honest with myself, which I had to do every once in a while, I didn't actually think I was going to write a book. So I decided I had to talk to Cosmo again. He was the one who put me on this track. He now had the responsibility to keep me on it. As much as I hated the idea, Cosmo had to be my mentor.
Music by Kevin MacLeod.
You're listening to Big World Network.